Told my wife she was selfish for considering a job across the country. Now she's planning to move with the kids and leave me behind. So my wife was recently offered a job across the country, which requires relocation but also will have frequent travel obligations. My wife feels this would be a huge plus to her career, but issue is we have 2 children and my practice is here. What she will earn is not even half of what I currently make. She is currently not working, so I told her if she wants to take the job she would have to help with childcare expenses, which would likely include a nanny cause I sometimes work nutty hours depending if I have a mandated hospital shift. She feels this is unfair because she would have to cover her own living expenses and paying for childcare on top of that would leave her with very little. This job is not even providing a relocation bonus. She suggested we move, but everything we know is here. Our children have their friends here and transferring my medical license is not all that simple. Her final suggestion is she takes the kids, I stay here and cover the cost of childcare and expenses cause she claims childcare and call is cheaper. Just not cheap enough for her potential salary to sustain me being a sup. I want to support her, but her suggestions seem half-baked to me. Update 1. Brief update. Since I got some requests, not much has changed. I spoke with our kids and of course they like it where we are their kids. The reason my wife wants to take this job is because she feels, due to nature of how she got the offer, her old professor, mentor, and that she is also a female engineer, she understands her position. My wife is free to do what she pleases, she does not need my permission, but by no means can she expect us to uproot everything on the drop of a dime. I would never ask that for you. I did suggest she tries and create her own firm here and find like-minded individuals who share a similar experience and create the work environment she wants. She is concerned she won't be able to break through that barrier of entry. I told we could find a means to fund said venture, but logistics of moving does not make sense at this. I would need at minimum a year to get my affairs in order. Working on research, working on opening an infusion center near the hospital that would take every insurance. This is a big one for me since many of the infusion centers near us do not take certain insurances since they pay so little. Looking to possibly expand my MS clinic with more providers who are willing to do this labor of love for our community. I cannot just drop all of that. I did tell my wife I have no intention of stopping her, and if she wishes to go that is fine, but I would not be sustaining 2 households. She moves, she would be responsible for all costs associated with the move. I will cover our shared expenses and primary residence and that is all. I will cover everything here and she would be responsible for her own expenses. I told her I would probably also lower or get of the credit cards also, since I know her, she would live off credit if she had to. I threw out the option if she can request she works from home 3 out of the 4 weeks she is not traveling and we can take it slow. See what the housing market is like, see what schools look like, normal stuff you do before moving. She was not in favor of waiting since allegedly they need her answer by October. I have no desire to divorce, but I am a child of divorce and was raised by my dad. Overall his outlook on divorce has always been no point fighting if the person has already checked out. If my wife wants out I will respect that. My wife has only been a sup for around 5 years. She worked when we had our firstborn and well into the pregnancy of our second. She took maternity leave. When that was done, went back to work. Few months after her return she was passed for a project contract. She did the legwork to secure, which lead her to quit and stay home with the kids. Our kids have been in daycare, under grandparents' care. My mom took 2 years to help with our firstborn. Her parents took off time for our second. Our second has been in academic daycare, as she puts, since they were 3. So it is not like she does not get breaks or is always with the children alone. My hours can be chaotic, but I made her well aware of this when we started to date and progress. When we started to date I was already vested in our community. My gut tells me she is going to take the job, and yes, it possibly will lead to divorce, and if that is the case, given how much traveling she will be doing, I suspect I would be granted primary custody. I would not take CS from her, have no desire or need for it. Sorry for the stream of consequences, it is slightly disjointed cause this is a frustrating position to be in. I have no desire to be in this position, but I have other responsibilities I cannot just drop without proper notice. If it comes to divorce, that is the way it played out and you just roll with it. As my parents told me, I will tell my kids, just because they were no longer together does not mean either of them loved me any less. Granted, it was not a cross-country thing in our case, my parents lived blocks away from one another. Was a pretty easy transition on my part. I hope we can do the same for our kids if need be. The deal is far worse than I thought, but it is a small startup thing with a small team. Who won the project since they took a huge cut on their profits. So pay is actually a lot less than half what I make, more like 1/3 of what I make if that. So I can see how she cannot afford to cover any shared expenses. She probably will barely be able to cover her own expenses. We will see, but all signs point to her taking the job and we will juicy adjust, but if divorce happens it happens, that is life. I do love my wife, but she is her own person with free will. Update 2. This will be my last update, and it was a hard one to make. I appreciate the feedback and suggestions, especially the one mentioning the looking at adjacent states. While some will say my priorities are skewed, our children don't want to move and I have close ties to the community. I do feel I have a responsibility to my patients and students. I know for some such commitments seem fleeting, but for those with MS it takes a long time to find a doctor they are comfortable with, and that is important especially with such an unpredictable condition. I run local support groups, hold information seminars, take part in trials for new treatments. Currently about to start our own stem cell therapy trial for those with more active and progressive progression that has been resistant to other therapies. Main goal is to get information, but also provide individuals a means to get access to this treatment that already shows promise, but it is expensive. All of that would be moot if our kids did not want to say, and I get it, for some kids don't have a say, but they are an active part of our family and their opinion does matter. Now for the claims I am uncaring. I do care and love my wife, but I also feel a relationship is not something you fight for. Either it works or it does not. Fighting to prove how deep you care or love someone is weird. Who am I to try and sway or change someone's mind? She wants to go, that is her prerogative. So long story short, she did take the job. As for divorce, she does not want divorce, but I am on the fence. Spoke with my parents and in-laws and they do agree what she is doing makes zero sense, but my wife can be stubborn, so as my Phil put it, once she made up her mind nothing will change it. Your only options are go with it and be a safety net for if she fails, and he does agree statistically she will fail. I don't want to be some fallback plan for if stuff goes south. Her plan for the kids is for them to stay with me and she comes over for major holidays and 2 weeks in the summer. Based off expenses she will need some additional support. Rent will be around $1,750 not counting utilities and stuff. Her projected take home will be around $3.5K. So more she talks to about this plan, worse it seems. So to help I offered to cover 6 months rent, but most likely this will lead to our separation at the very least. She is slightly upset that I am willing to hire a nanny now that she is leaving, but I explained hiring a nanny when she was not working and our kids have been in academic daycare, as she likes to put. Why exactly would we need a nanny? I reminded her she willfully left her job and I did support that choice cause that is what she wanted to do. Either way, still have not broken the news to the kids. They do know she was thinking of taking a job and may be far away for a time. I spoke with an attorney and I am going to hold off on it cause everything the kids know is here and they have a established route and support system. So they highly doubt she will try to take them. So overall going to try this LDR thing, but a part of me does feel like she is just using me cause I highly doubt she would make this move if she did not have some level of support. Even her father said as much. End of the day, maybe she wants me to fight for our marriage, but way I see it as a marriage worth keeping if you need to fight for it. I love her and do not want her to go, but if she feels she must, then she must. I am not going to sit here and pretend her happiness is dependent on me or our kids. She is a beautiful person and would be egotistical of me to think she will not find another person who is more in step with her desires. I think we will be fine no matter what happens. I am prepared to buy her out of the house at market value. We'll split what needs to be split and call it a day. We will co-parent the best we call. I do not hate her or anything. She currently does not like her current life and that is fine. Maybe I am just a weird guy, but I don't see any point in therapy because the fact she wants to do this means that much to her, and facts are facts. If she was thinking of the kids or our marriage, she would not even consider this as a viable option, let alone take the offer. If divorce ends up happening, spoke with my lawyer and he told me it would be up to me to request it. It is not automatically awarded during the custody portion. I most likely will not request it and hope she does what is best for our children when it comes to saving for higher education or future expenses like a house or WE. Thanks again the feedback, our family will be fine. Update 3. Not sure if this is an update or me just writing to get my head straight, but things kind of moved fast and slow at the same time. We told the kids on Sunday after pancakes cause that seemed like the least dramatic way to do it, and the older one went quiet. In that way where you can hear all the gears spinning, and the younger one asked if her mom was going to the moon or if the plane was like the ones on YouTube that land on water. My wife cried, which I expected, and then she did that thing where she straightens her shoulders like she's about to go on stage and explain the city and the project and how it's temporary and growth and all the buzzwords you say to yourself so you don't back out at the last second. I didn't say much beyond we are not breaking, we are changing, and I meant it even if I hate it. The older one asked if we were still going to the fall fair and if grandma would still come on Fridays and if he could still do robotics in the winter, and I said yes to all of it cause those are the parts of the scaffolding I can keep intact. After my wife went upstairs, the younger one asked if temporary meant like when the power goes out and it comes back, and I told her I hope so. That night nobody slept well. She left 2 days later with 2 suitcases and a duffel because the rest is being shipped later, and I drove her to the airport because even if we're not in lockstep I'm not going to send her in a rideshare with a stranger at 5 in the morning. It was a quiet drive. She did the nervous talk about gate numbers and layovers and how the apartment was smaller than advertised, but there's a coffee shop downstairs and they have oat milk which she likes, and I filed that away because these are the details people cling to make new places feel less alien. At security she hugged me like we were both trying to memorize each other's spine. She said don't let them wear Crocs to school, which made me laugh, and she laughed, and then she cried again, and then she went. I watched her go down the long hallway with that blue case she's had since grad school, and I had the stupid thought that if the bag falls over she's going to be really mad because the handle sticks, and she will miss the flight, as if the universe is going to hand me an easy out via cheap luggage. It didn't. The first week was logistics. I hired the nanny. Turns out the nanny we ended up liking is a retired NICU nurse who got bored and missed schedules and snacks and tiny socks. She came with references from half the hospital, which saved me the time of pretending the glowing emails from strangers matter more than watching someone cut grapes properly and sit on the floor with my kid and not check their phone every 5 minutes. We did the background check, we talked about hours, and she told me straight up she doesn't drive after dark, so I reworked my clinic nights so I'm there for bedtime on those days, and the hospital shifts I can't move. We made a chart so grandma comes and I run a backup plan with my partner to cover me if a patient runs long. It is much cleaner on paper than it feels at 7:30 p.m. when someone's left shoe is missing and I am answering a secure message about a fever and the dog decides now is the time to throw up something unidentifiable he absolutely ate outside because he is a menace. But we're getting through it. School called on day 3 because the older one told his counselor he felt like a chair with a missing leg, but you can still kind of balance if you put your foot under it, which honestly is how it feels here too. I took him in to see the school psychologist. I know I said I didn't see the point in therapy in the couple sense and I stand by that for us, but for kids I am not stupid. He liked the counselor. They made a plan for check-ins and he gets a laminated card to come down when he feels it tipping, and I sent my wife a picture of that card, and she sent back a heart and thank you. Small win. My wife's new place is a 1-bedroom in a building that used to be a hotel and still looks like it in the hallways. We FaceTimed the first night and she walked the phone around and I could see how she'd tried to make it feel like ours by putting the old plant stand by the window with a fern, even though I told her that fern was going to die because that window faces the wrong way for light, and she laughed and said then we'll get a fake one like normal lazy people. First day on the job they had her in a conference room with 8 people, and from what she described it is exactly what I thought it was. Small team, big project, and all hands doing everything with no infrastructure, and the HR person is also the office manager and also the COO's cousin, which made me rub my forehead. They gave her a laptop, a badge and a packet that actually said non-compete in 24-point font. She sent me a picture of that too, and I told her to not sign anything without having someone read it. She signed it anyway because everyone else signed it. I can't be the one holdout on day 1. And then she called me from the bathroom of a ramen place the next day to say the non-compete was 2 years and 2 states wide, and I needed to help her find an employment lawyer to tell her if she just chained herself to something stupid. So now I also have an employment lawyer. He was not thrilled. There is some wiggle room because the state she's in doesn't like those, but it's another rock added to the pile. We did first weekend visit as a test without actually traveling, just did the long Saturday with her on FaceTime in the morning making waffles with us, and then the kids built the Lego she sent as a bribe. She had to hop off twice for calls because they had a problem with one of the vendors, and she's now liaison, which is code for you are the only one who understood that spreadsheet, so now it's yours forever. The older one took it in stride and the younger one cried and hid in the laundry pile, which is very on brand for her. Later that night my wife texted me she's already on 2 travel weeks in November and 1 in December, and I stared at that for a long time and then put my phone face down and went to fold towels because folding towels is calming in a way I can't explain. Money has already gotten messy. Payroll is bi-monthly, but her first check is delayed due to onboarding, which is rich for a company that needed her to answer by October like the world was going to end. She asked if I could loan her the deposit for the utilities because the 6 months rent I gave her is already allocated, and she didn't expect the pet deposit even though she doesn't have a pet. It's just how they itemize it, which she somehow missed. I said yes to the utilities because I am not trying to have her sitting in an apartment with no lights like we are in a Dickens novel, but I wrote down the exact amount and I made us both sign a 1-paragraph note that this is not a precedent and I will not be an ATM for this adventure. She sent me a thumbs up, and I know, and I believe she thinks that's true, but I also know how numbers add up and that city eats money. She told me her take home after the first real check will be closer to $3. $2K, not $3. $5K, because their health plan is a joke and she has to buy private, and the travel per diem only counts when you're physically in the air, not when you're sitting in a hotel waiting for a part, which feels like the exact kind of corner A small company cuts because it sounds small but it's actually huge. We did a dry run for holidays with flights and it is a logistical headache I would not wish on an enemy. There is not a direct route from here to there that lines up with kid-friendly hours, so either we do a very early morning and I carry a sleeping 6-year-old through security while holding a backpack and a booster seat like a pack mule, or we fly them at night and deal with the gremlin version of them the next day. I told her we need everything on the calendar now because I can't have maybe hanging over school schedules and calls in my clinic. She said yes and then added unless they need me on site, and I told her that's not how this is going to work. The kids are not a flight you reschedule because the connector got fog. We agreed to a once it's on the calendar it's carved in stone unless someone ends up in an ER rule, and she agreed. We'll see if her CEO agrees when she says she's not traveling on the 22nd because she has a commitment from September. I'm not going to be the one training her boss on boundaries, but she is going to have to. My partner at the practice asked me if I was sure I didn't want to scale back more because he can tell I am doing 5 jobs right now: doctor, dad, chef, Uber, and unofficial comptroller of a startup I don't even work for. I said I can't scale back because the infusion center lease just came through, and if I don't get this done now the timeline gets into spring and then the vendors get backed up and then our patients wait again, and that's not on the menu. We got the oxygen line permit signed and the chair vendor is going to give us a decent discount if we take floor models, which is fine by me cause those chairs are more comfortable broken in. And I got a call from a woman who runs a little community foundation that lost her sister to a progressive form of MS, and she wants to sponsor 3 slots in the trial for people who can't afford it. Stuff like that will keep me going even when I'm doing math on napkins for the 4th time in a day and answering an email from my wife about whether she should downgrade her phone plan. Her dad called me on Tuesday from his garage because I could hear the old radio he never turns off, and he told me he offered to come stay with her for a few days, and she told him no, because she wants to prove she can do it alone, and he said that stubbornness is a blessing and a curse, normal dad speech, and then he asked me not to let the kids think she chose a job over them cause he knows how his daughter's brain works and she will turn that into a self-fulfilling mess. I told him I won't, that in this house we're going to say mom is working on a project that matters to her and adults can do hard things and kids can be mad and loved at the same time. I said it out loud to see if I believed it, and I think I do most of the time. Then he asked me if I had changed the beneficiaries on the life insurance, and I laughed and said not yet, and then I did the next day because I don't know what the next year looks like and I am not playing fast and loose with paperwork. I also had my attorney draw up a temporary parenting plan even if we aren't filing anything, just something we both signed so it is structure and not vibes. She signed, which is good. On the less noble side of all this, and I'm not proud to admit it, there was a moment on Thursday night where she called at 10:40 p.m. my time from a hotel in a town I had to Google because she had a small panic attack after a meeting. And I sat there on the phone in the dark talking her back down, telling her to put her feet on the carpet and breathe and count the elevator dings and list 3 blue things in the room because tricks work even if they sound dumb, and I could hear how alone she felt, and I wanted to say you did this, but I didn't because what's the point of being right when someone is on the edge? When she calmed down she apologized for waking me and I said I was awake anyway, which was a lie because I was finally asleep for once, and then I hung up and went and sat on the couch for a long time looking at the wall, and I got mad in that useless way that fills your chest and has nowhere to go, and then I cleaned the kitchen and went to bed because there was nothing to do with the anger besides wear it down like sandpaper. The kids are adjusting in their kid ways. The older one has become very invested in making a calendar for mom's visits with stickers and red X's, and he is treating it like a science experiment, which is how he copes. The younger one is slightly feral, but honestly she always is, and now she sleeps with my wife's sweatshirt like it's a golden retriever and insists her mom say goodnight to the sweater on FaceTime, which is faintly ridiculous, and also works, so fine. There was one ugly morning where the younger one stomped around yelling I hate engineers, and I told her that is not a thing we say because that's a job not a person, and also engineers make bridges and slides in the Costco cart that can hold 5 chickens and a watermelon, and she paused and said I like the cart, and then ate a waffle. People think kids are these deep wells of pain. Sometimes they are just small people who need somebody to tell them the cart is still going to be there. A thing I didn't anticipate was my students. One of them asked me if I could push our lecture because she's got a residency interview, and then she kind of awkwardly asked if my wife left because of me doing too much, and I looked at this 26-year-old with her hair in a bun and her nervous smile, and I thought about saying something that would make me sound like the wizened old guy who knows the secrets, and instead I just said sometimes 2 timelines don't match and the kindest thing you can do is not force them to, and then I sent her the slides. I don't know if that's wisdom or me posturing around a wound, but it sounded fine at the time. There's another piece I should say because it changes things. My wife's old mentor emailed her after she started. Not the one who got her the offer, the professor from grad school who told her there were going to be rooms she'd walk into, where she'd have to be louder than she wanted. She told my wife to give it 6 months and to ask for 1 remote week out of each month by proving what she can do from anywhere, document it, don't complain, just deliver and then ask with a plan, and my wife sent me that email and wrote this made me feel less crazy. I told her if she can get that we can work with that. I am not moving, and the kids aren't moving, but if she can carve out a month where she is actually here 1 week out of 4, and the travel is the other week, we can build something that isn't just birthdays on FaceTime. It's not an answer, but it's the first thing that feels like a shape. I still don't know if we end up divorced. I am less on the fence about it day to day and more on 2 different fences depending on whether I slept and if the dishwasher leaked again. Right now the focus is the next 8 weeks. She comes back for a weekend in 2. Then Thanksgiving is here because the flights and my patience for airports with 2 children is limited. Then she's back on a site for most of December but will be here for 3 days around the holiday, and I already told the hospital I am not on call for that stretch, and if something blows up I will owe my partner so many lattes I will just buy him an espresso machine. I'm still paying the mortgage and the kids' stuff and the utilities, and I covered her electric because I don't want to be the guy who played hardball over lights, but the line is holding where I put it. She is not my dependent. If she crashes I am not the net. I will always be the net for the kids. For her, I am a guy who will pick up the phone and talk her down in a hotel hallway and send the budget spreadsheet template I made and also tell her to call her HR because per diem should be per diem and don't let them gaslight you. I'm not asking for grace here cause I still chose this version of me, husband/father/doctor who plays Tetris with hours and feelings, but if there is any good news to wrap on it's that the kids laughed at dinner tonight because the dog did something gross and spaghetti was involved and it was disgusting and everyone was happy for a second, and then we all sat around the table and my son asked if mom knows how to use a drill and I said she could build him a shelf faster than I can, and he smiled. Small things are the ballast. If we get through this it will be because of 1,000 small things that nobody outside this house would ever clap for, and I am okay with that. Update 4. If the house had a heartbeat you could hear it change when she walked in again. It was a Friday night that decided to become Saturday before she got here because the world's airports play by their own gods. She was supposed to land at 6:40, then 8:10, Then gate change became where de-icing became where sitting on the tarmac because of a crew timeout, and I finally stopped refreshing the app because there are only so many times your brain can rehearse the same disappointment before it starts looking for fights it doesn't need. The kids fell asleep on the couch watching a nature documentary about turtles that migrate by the moon, because of course. She texted "I'm so sorry" 3 times and then sent a picture of a pretzel that looked like it had been through a war. When she walked in at 12:22 a.m. she smelled like airplane and anxiety and the scarf she wears in airports because she thinks it helps her sleep sitting up. The dog went berserk like he thinks he invented loyalty. The older one sat up with bedhead and said, "You made it," and the younger one rolled over, saw her, and immediately started crying, which is our family brand. We're fine until we're not. We did the choreography of people who know each other's corners. She tucked them in with the sweatshirt and the stories about turbulence normalized into bumps, and then she stood in the hallway looking at their doors like they were archives. When everything was quiet I asked if she wanted tea and she said something stronger, and we ended up sitting at the kitchen table with the good bottle of bourbon my partner gave me when we signed the infusion center lease, and we drank 2 fingers each like we were pretending we are the kind of people who enjoy bourbon instead of 2 people trying to slow a brain. I told her she could have the guest room and she looked at me like she wanted me to tell her not to, and I didn't. Complicated doesn't always have a speech. She started to tell me silly things first, which is how you say the big thing without bleeding out on the tile. The CEO chews ice in meetings and it's making everyone crazy. The building's elevator has a mind of its own and once left her between floors for 12 minutes. In that city they will give a street 2 different names on the same block and it makes her feel like a character in a bad dream. Then she told me the CFO asked people to be understanding about salary timing and can they float on reimbursements for another week, which is a small sentence that sends a shiver down my spine because that is how bills become statements and statements become late fees, and suddenly you are negotiating with your wife about whether the kid needs new cleats or can squeeze into the old ones if he takes out the insole. I did not say "I told you so" because that helps nobody. I did say, don't let this become normal. Normal is the thing you let happen to you when you stop paying attention. On the non-compete the lawyer sent a letter that is more polite version of "absolutely not," citing case law and the particular biases of her new home state against restraints of trade. It reads like a lab report, which made me appreciate the lawyer more. HR wrote back with a form letter and then their cousin COO sent something for clarity that said they don't intend to enforce against True Consulting and we value your contribution, which means nothing in actual risk land, but I felt something unclench in my chest on her behalf. She admitted she signed an IP assignment that I wish she hadn't, one of those overbroad "anything you create belongs to us if it smells like the field we're in" deals, but the lawyer thinks that's easier to bracket than non-competes. Add it to the very long list of things that could be better and file under monitor. The first morning she made pancakes that tasted like we were 22 because she burned the first batch and swore under her breath, and the kids thought that was hysterical. She bought the older one a kit to build a little shelf and brought a tiny set of screwdrivers in a case that looks like candy. They sat on the floor and she showed him how to measure twice and level, and he looked at her like she was a magician. When he hung it by his bed later and it wasn't crooked, he said very quietly, "Mom, I didn't know you were so good at making things," and she smiled and then had to go to the bathroom to cry, which is the cruelest thing about small victories, they come with sawed-off edges. I thought the visit would be easier because it's the thing we said we wanted, proof that we are not breaking, we are changing his shape. It was also exhausting in a way I didn't anticipate. Everything was soft and minefields at the same time. She kept trying to be all of herself in 40 hours. She kept checking her phone after telling me she wouldn't. She held my hand on the couch when the kids were somewhere else and then moved hers away fast like the couch burned. We did not sleep together. We did not talk about it beyond that. At one point she sat on the stairs and told me the COO made a joke about her mom energy being useful with vendors, and she stared at the wall after. She said it like she might put a hole in the paint if she blinked too hard. I told her to document everything. She said, "What does that even do?" And I had to swallow the answer because sometimes the value is in keeping yourself feeling less gaslit than in the outcome. On my end, the infusion center finally had the first fire suppression inspection and we failed because the contractor used the wrong gauge on a valve and also because the signage for the oxygen closets wasn't sufficiently reflective, which is both ridiculous and exactly the kind of thing that saves someone's life when the world is wrong. I drove across town to the supplier at 6:30 a.m. on Wednesday to get the right reflective placards because waiting a week for them to ship is how you lose a slot in the inspector's run. The chair vendor tried to substitute 3 models because of inventory constraints, which is code for we sold those floor models to someone who waived cash, but I pulled the email where they promised and said no, and I think I scared the very polite sales rep because he apologized 6 times and found them. The foundation lady came through and sent a check with a handwritten note that said, "For the ones who don't know how to ask yet," and I sat in the parking lot and read it twice and then went inside and started calling the first 3 people on the waitlist. We got IRB approval for the first cohort and the statistician sent me a text with confetti emojis, which is not a thing I knew I wanted until now. The school had conferences. The older one's teacher said he is turning into a tiny engineer who writes better than he thinks, which is my favorite kind of kid, and then she gently said he is carrying a backpack you can't see and sometimes he pulls it on at odd times, like when they did a group project and someone was late and he said, "I can't make the rest of you turn into grown-ups," which is something he learned here, and I felt my stomach drop because I don't want to be the reason he becomes formidable too fast. We put a plan in place. Again, small cards. He likes systems, give him a system and he'll play by the rules. The younger one's teacher said she has big feelings and bigger metaphors, and when she got mad last week she told the class my mom is far away but my socks aren't, which is possibly the most accurate sentence anyone in our house has said in months. The nanny, who I am convinced is part wizard, took it upon herself to create a morning board with little pictures and magnets, and I rolled my eyes internally because I assumed we didn't need an Instagram routine, and then we started using it in the house. Shaved 10 minutes off our morning chaos because now there is no debate about teeth or shoes, the magnet either moved or it didn't. She is also the one who noticed the dishwasher had a leak before it became a lake and texted me a picture of a quarter-sized puddle that smelled like pennies and regret. I shut the water valve off, fixed a gasket that cost me $12, and resisted the impulse to write a love sonnet to competence. Finances remained a high-wire act. She did get her first check. It was light. The per diem rules are a joke you only laugh at if you don't have a landlord. She offered to pay me back for the utilities and I said to put it in a separate account and we will zero it out in 6 months or a year, whichever comes first, because keeping score financially is poison when you try to co-parent. It's also poison when you're divorced, which I am not yet. I did hold the line on anything else. She asked if we could keep her on the family phone plan and I said yes because that's not the hill. She floated the idea of me co-signing a nicer apartment once her lease is up because the walls are thin and the neighbor practices saxophone badly, and I told her that if she wants a nicer place she can figure it out with a budget and not arbitraging my credit. She didn't argue. She made a spreadsheet with my template and texted me a picture of it like a kid showing you a math problem. It had little categories and a sad little bar labeled fun with $40 in it. I don't know if I felt judgment or pity, maybe both, mostly sadness that a life can get reduced to boxes you cut down to make the columns add. There was a night she called me from an airport at 1:13 a.m. our time because a storm rolled through the hub and she was going to miss seeing the younger one's class do pumpkin parade where all the kids wear paper hats that make them look like vegetables. She was crying in that quiet way where you try to hide it so no one around you has to participate in your life. She asked me to lie to our 6-year-old or to tell the truth, and I said we don't lie, we never lie, we reframe. In the morning the younger one wore her paper pumpkin and I told her mom's plane got stuck in a cloud and she was mad in the way that is very specifically about hats and moms and promises. We FaceTimed from the corner of the classroom because I have no shame when it comes to bending rules for this stuff. The teacher nodded at me like we're co-conspirators. Thanksgiving got closer and travel looked like an elaborate dare. We committed to her not flying the kids anywhere, to everything being here, to a meal that isn't about proving anything. Then her boss put a site visit on the Wednesday before and she told them she couldn't do it, and they implied she was not a team player, which is what companies say when they forgot you're a human with a calendar. She held the line. I was proud of her and I didn't say that exactly, I said good, which she understood as proud. They moved it to Tuesday, she'll land Wednesday night. If the universe is feeling generous it will go exactly as planned and if not we eat mashed potatoes at 9 p.m. and call it a story. The trial started consent visits. I sat with a man younger than me by 8 years whose hands were shaking because he said he's never been picked first for anything and now he gets to try this, and he was so terrified he asked me to explain it 3 ways, so I did, the science way, the layman way, the imagine your body as a neighborhood way. He signed and then asked me if he needed to stop drinking beer before football because his buddy said it would kill the cells, and I swallowed a smile and told him moderation is not the same as monasticism. I'm not a gushy person, but I sat in my car after and stared at my hands and felt grateful I picked this life even on the days I want to set my phone on fire and drop it down a well. There was also the other thing I didn't want to admit out loud. A local paper did a small piece on our support group and they wanted a photo. The photographer was quick and efficient and a woman who told me to stop looking like I was waiting for a jury verdict, and I laughed and she caught it and it was a good picture. When it ran online one of my students sent me the link with 2 clapping hands and then an old friend from med school texted you look slightly less haunted than last time, which made me laugh and then it made me feel like the part of me that's privately wearing grief is visible. I'm trying not to be performative about it. I go to work. I read to my kids. I eat what my 6-year-old calls adult cereal at 10 p.m. and fold laundry and take calls from a woman in a different time zone who used to be my favorite person to fall asleep beside and is now my favorite person to remind to keep receipts. She asked me to go to one session with a co-parenting therapist a friend of hers recommended, not couples, which I said I don't see the point in, but co-parenting so we don't build silent resentments that the kids learn to hear. I said yes because it is about the kids, not about saving something I'm not sure is savable. We went on video, me in the office with a borrowed laptop because mine was updating, her in her apartment where the fern is somehow still alive, and the therapist was one of those gentles who says more with their eyebrows than their words. We made a plan for holidays and for what we call each other in front of the kids and how we handle new partners if and when that ever becomes real, which felt like talking about Mars but apparently you have to plan for Mars or you end up on Pluto by accident. She said something I hated and had to admit was true, you can't punish someone into being the person you wanted them to be. That is not a marriage thing. That is a human thing. We agreed on the language we use. We say our house and your apartment and not home when we talk about 2 places because home is a word that can slice. The therapist told us studies show kids adjust better when the parents sound like they go to the same meetings, and I thought, fine, then we go to the same meeting. There was a small, stupid fight over Crocs. She brought the kids a pair each with the little charms because she thinks they are funny and I think they are the footwear equivalent of giving up. We had already laughed about it at the airport that first day, and then 2 weeks later the younger one tried to wear them to school and I said no, and my wife FaceTimed that morning to say let her wear them just this once, and then I said it's 50 degrees and raining, and we both heard the other person say this isn't about shoes, and I took a breath and we compromised. Wear them in the car, sneakers in the bag, switch at drop-off. It is embarrassing to care this much about rubber shoes, but this is how all of it plays out, in increments so small you only notice if you're watching. She did something that surprised me. She asked her mentor, the one who told her to be loud when rooms are wrong, to read over a proposal she made. If she delivers X by Y, very specific pieces of the project, she wants 1 remote week every month, non-negotiable, built into her contract. Her mentor marked it up and sent it back with "This is strong and make this metric clearer," and my wife sent it. No fireworks. She handed it to the CEO after a meeting and said, "I'm not asking for grace, I'm showing you math." The CEO said they'd think about it. 2 days later she got a trial month, 1 remote week. If she drops the ball, it's gone. If she nails it, they revisit. I told her, good, and then I said, you're going to have to be better than fair, because women always do in those rooms and it's unfair and it's true. She didn't argue. She has early mornings in her apartment with post-its all over the table and calls it dawn and a whiteboard with boxes. It looks like every startup cliche, and it is also her way of punching a hole in a wall without breaking her hand. She's back for that first remote week in 2 weeks. We agreed she won't live at my house during those, she'll stay with her friend on the other side of town because boundaries are not just Instagram quotes. She'll be here for breakfast and dinner and school pickup like a life we had for a while that fits again for seconds. I am bracing for the whiplash and also looking forward to the way everyone breathes when she is in the room. I don't know what that means for us in January or June. I know what it means for Monday at 7:15 when somebody can sign the form I forgot on the counter without me sprinting to the printer like I'm defusing a bomb. The dog ate a Lego. Not a big one, a tiny blue piece that somehow still looked sharp. He gagged and did that reverse sneeze that makes me want to fling my wallet at the vet. The nanny said, "Wait," and did the weird magic thing where she rubs his throat and he politely gave it back like a bad tip. We all clapped like idiots. The kids insisted we wash it and put it back in the set and I said no, it goes in the garbage and joins the landfill that will outlive us all, and then we had a 10-minute conversation about what landfills are and what forever means, so that's how that morning went. I keep thinking there will be a big decision. There isn't. It's 1,000 small ones, some intangible, some ridiculous. I can feel the edges where divorce lives, and I can also see a version where we're these weird roommates who share humans and a history and nothing else, and maybe that's okay for a minute if everyone knows the rules. I got the kids snow boots because our weather app thinks it's funny to send little snowflakes on days when it's 60 degrees and then surprise us, and she sent a link to a museum that's doing a space exhibit in December and said she'll take them and she wants to be the space parent. Fine. Be the space parent. I am good at school lunches and permission slips and science fair trifolds that look like a sane person made them. I don't need to win at Pluto. There was one more thing that changed the tilt, not dramatic, just a nudge. One of my patients, older woman, the kind who calls me doc like we have a radio show together, brought me a loaf of pumpkin bread her daughter made, and she said, "You look tired," and I did the dance where you thank and deflect, and she squeezed my forearm and said, "Life gets heavy when you're carrying it right," and then she laughed and said, "That sounded wiser in my head." She's right, though. There's a way to carry that doesn't break you. Not noble, not martyrdom, just steady. If there's a story here, I want it to be that the kids learned steadiness. That we made pancakes and calendars and said no to Crocs in the rain and yes to FaceTime in a classroom corner, and that when they look back they see 2 parents who were not perfect on purpose but showed up on purpose. So that's the news at the moment. The fern is still alive. The reflective placards are very reflective. The calendar has more red X's than blank spaces now, and the older one says that feels good. The younger one told me today that she wants to be an engineer who fixes the Costco cart when it gets stuck, and I told her that would make a lot of people very happy. My wife is on a plane again tomorrow and I am on call tonight, and the dog is maybe contemplating another Lego. It's a life. It's not the one I would have written if you handed me a pen 5 years ago. It's the one that exists, and I am trying to be good at existing in it. If there's more to tell, I'll tell it when I can name it without making it bigger than it is. For now, I'm going to put 2 bowls in the sink, lay out small socks by the heater so they're warm in the morning, and set the coffee on a timer like the old man I have become. It's not romantic. It's the ballast. It's keeping us afloat.